Due to what's happening in the world right now, a lot of businesses are shutting their offices down, and all of a sudden their team has to work remotely. Like they say, hey, you need to work from home from now. And as a business and everyone in the business, they'll need to figure out how to do that, how to work remotely, how to do your work efficiently without going crazy, while also, stay connected as a team. And that's what I want to go into in this video. Specifically, I want to talk about 6 important things when working remotely. And the reason why I'm sharing this with all of you is because I've been running a remote business for years now. I think over the last 7-8 years, we've always been 100% remote. And over time, we learned a lot of lessons, right? I've learned what to do, what not to do, how to create culture in a remote team. And I want to share that knowledge with everyone out there who currently is forced to close their office down, right? And to work remotely. And maybe they're like trying to figure it out. Maybe they're trying to figure out how to do that best, how to keep your team motivated and all these things. And in this video, I hope to share my knowledge so that you can make better decisions as a leader. The first most important thing is to trust your team. Like there has to be 100% trust. And a lot of the team in our business, we've never seen them yet, right? Like we hire people digitally. So people ask me like, how do you know they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? How do you know? And my answer is always the same. You need to trust them. Like if there's no trust, a remote team cannot work. If you're the type of guy who just wants to check everyone's doing their work, then remote work is going to freak you out. You need to have 100% trust and confidence in your team. Without it, you have a big problem. Right? You need to trust your team 100%. Most important rule. I probably mentioned this multiple times in this video because I can't stress out enough how important this part is. Second thing that's really important is that as the leader of the company, you need to show leadership. You need to show direction. Because if you're all in the same office, if you have a certain idea and you're talking about it, like ideas spread more easily because people talk about it during lunch, during their ping pong table. Like ideas spread more easily, but with a remote team, like if I talk to someone on Slack or on Zoom and we have a quick call, like the rest of the team doesn't hear it, like communication doesn't flow naturally through the organization. So as the leader, it's even more important to show leadership, to show like this is where we're going, this is what we need to do, like that, because otherwise people can feel isolated. So you want to make sure that everyone knows like this is where we're going. Like everyone, like be super crystal clear. You cannot be clear enough about it. And number 3, and this is probably most important for your team, for the people who are working remotely, is to stick to routines. This especially is important for those who have always worked in an office and all of a sudden, like due to what's happening in the world, they suddenly have to force themselves to work from home. And it's really important to stick to certain routines that you have. Like what's going to happen? Like if you not do these routines, you're just going to wake up, you're just going to start working in the morning. Like all of a sudden, like it's not clear when you're working, when you're not working. Like it just becomes one big blend. But it's really important to stick to that routine. Like take your shower, have your breakfast, do the work, take your break, do your work, like do the same thing as you were doing before. The only difference is that it's in a different location, but try to stick to your routine. So that's number 3, super important to keep that routine going. And number 4 is to be clear in priorities, right? This actually goes hand in hand with leadership. You want to make sure, especially if communication is different than compared to being in an office, you want to make sure people know exactly not just where they're going, but what are the priorities, what's most important. Because again, information flows differently in an online company, in a remote company. It doesn't naturally flow here and there, and that's why it's so important to be very clear on responsibilities and priorities to know, so that everyone knows, like, all right, this is what I need to focus on, right? Because especially, again, if you're always working in an office, all of a sudden you go back home and you have to work from home. Like, if people don't know, like, all right, I need to focus on this and this and this, and by this time, it's really important to the deadlines as well. If someone has never worked remotely before, I'm betting that a lot of people are going to struggle to find motivation. I see it with my wife as well. She just was forced to work remotely as well. And she's like normally she has their meetings and deadlines and all of a sudden everything's changed. And she's like, do I need to finish this now or later? Like, so it's important for you as a leader to keep those deadlines intact, right? Make sure like they know what to work on, when to work on, and things like that. Make sure like they know, like there's no vagueness or confusion in that regard. And that brings me to number 5, that you need to have clear KPIs, right? Because even though you trust your team and even though you set the you set the expectation, like this is where we're going. You are the leader, and you show where the path is going. And they have their routines, and they also know the priorities. Then still, you want to make sure to measure your KPIs. So you make sure that whatever you're working on, all the projects that you're working on, like for example, if marketing is important, which it should be, like how many new customers are we getting? Like actually measure it, because if you measure it, it will improve. And this is important for any business, but I think it's even more important for a remote business, because again, like communication spreads differently. So by having clear KPIs and clear measurements, it just helps everyone be focused on what they need to do. And number 6, and this is actually a really important one that I think is going to be a really good thing for a lot of businesses right now that are currently forced to suddenly work remotely, and that is documentation, right? Because if you work in the same office, you don't need to document as much, because people just know things, right? If you ask about a certain thing and like, hey, like how do we do this? Why, like why are you doing it that way? I don't know. Like we've been doing that for years, right? Like, and then someone new comes in the company and they talk about it in the office, and that person does it the same way. But weirdly enough, that information is only in people's minds. Like it doesn't actually exist somewhere, right? Have clear documentation about all the things you do in your business, right? And that's, again, it's actually a good thing, because what that will do is like all of a sudden, like looking at your business and like looking at all these processes and like, wow, like once you have all these things written down, if someone new comes on board, like you can just like, hey, this is how we do it. Like go figure it out. You can do it. If you have doubt, like check it out. If it doesn't make sense, ask me, right? But it will help your business grow, because all of a sudden, the more things are written down, the easier it will be if you grow, that people can still figure out why things are doing. If someone leaves or someone gets sick, right, which is obviously a very important thing to take into account as well, you always have your documentation. That's what I wanted to share with all of you for just forced to work from home, or just, you know, your whole company shifted towards being a remote company, to share some experience and to share some advice on like what has been working for us in our remote company. So our company is called UpViral and Connectio. It's 2 different companies. We've been fully remote for years now. And if you have any questions, feel free to let us know, and I'll see you in the next video.